Hey everyone, thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to be going over Ethereum. We haven't talked about Ethereum in a little while. If you guys like this content, please subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on. And feel free to check out the social channels in the description below. So what we're going to be looking at today is the same thing we looked at Bitcoin a few days ago. We're going to be looking at the time needed to realize various percent losses. So this first graph shows it shows we have two y-axes. We have the primary axis over here, which is the price of Ethereum, and then we have the ROI time in days. So the way this works is if at any point in time you could have bought Ethereum at some point in the past to where today you would be at a 90% loss, then we show that with a red data point. And then if you pick a red data point and then scroll over, you can see how many days it took to experience that 90% loss. Now, some of you are probably wondering, well, why do I want to think about losses? I think it's good in terms of looking at patterns, not hiding behind what the data says, but just, fully understanding everything about the data and, looking at various facets of it and taking it for what it is. This first one shows 90% losses, and you can see that in the history of Ethereum, our first band of a 90% loss occurs over here back at the end of 2018. And obviously, it's a 90% loss with respect to this peak up here. And if you look to see how long it took, this band, it took a few hundred days. And even over here, you would have experienced a potential 90% loss with respect to the same peak. But it would have taken maybe like 600 or 700 days or something. So these bands exist, and it's when 90% losses occur is when you'll see these bands pop up, because that's what I'm looking at. Now, 90% losses do sound scary. However, Bitcoin has also experienced 90% losses, and in fact, you can see, so this figure over here, inset, is the same figure but for Bitcoin, and you can see that there's a band over here that shows a time when Bitcoin would have experienced a 90% loss. Now, obviously, this scale, the time over here is over the course of a decade rather than just a few years like it is with Ethereum. So, keep that in mind. And then also, of course, coins, any other coin other than Bitcoin, generally speaking, tends to experience higher levels of volatility. And, so it kind of makes sense that, we're seeing, these, it makes sense that we would at least be seeing these 90% losses. I mean, Bitcoin experienced the same thing. Now, 80% losses actually look very similar with Ethereum, as with 90%, and that's because this drop here came very quickly. So basically, if you were seeing an 80% loss, you're also seeing a 90% loss with respect to this peak over here. So there really isn't a huge difference between 80 and 90% losses. Now, if you look at 70% losses, things become a little bit clearer in terms of each of these bands, represents times when you could have been sitting at a 70% loss. So just consider that as we continue to march through time, and we're going to compare another one with Bitcoin as well. So you can see in our current phase over here, we're looking at 70% losses, but again, the time to see these 70% losses is generally increasing. So over here, it was down to maybe 40 days. Over here, it went up maybe 50 to 60 days, maybe even 70 days from the, looking at from this time period over here up to, at what point could you have bought and you would have seen, say, a 70% decrease in your ROI. And all it does is it looks back in time till the first instance. Clearly, if you bought up here, you would still be way greater than 70% loss down here, but it just looks back in time to see the last point that you could have bought and still see a 70% loss. So let's just keep marching through because we have a lot of them. We have the 60% loss case, and you can see as we move forward, they generally trend down. So it just shows you the level of volatility that to see 90% losses, it's probably gonna take several hundred days. 80% losses are pretty much the same. 70% losses can occur in as little as 3 to 4 months or something. 60% losses can occur, in 20 to 30 days. Even over here, it happened very quickly in just a few days. And 50% losses. So you can see these bands here. So we want to compare this one to Bitcoin. Now, I like to generally, I know they're not quantitatively exactly the same, but qualitatively, you can see similarities in say this run up, this move down, another very quick run up, and then followed by one last push. Here you can see Ethereum kind of had the same thing. We had the first run up, and then it came down. We had the second run up, which corresponds to this one right here. And then finally we had the third one, and then now we've come down into this phase. So you can see these bands over here showing 50% losses kind of correspond with this band here, or I should say this band here, not this one. And then moving up, we don't have 50% losses in this region because it's not like if you had bought over here, you would not be at a 50% loss here. In fact, you would have been up an order of magnitude on your investment. So you can kind of see that this kind of mimics this region of Bitcoin, and then this region over here seems to be somewhat mimicking Bitcoin during the last market cycle. Now, this is not an exact science. Basically, I look at as many different pieces of data as I can, and I make a video on it and try to get feedback on it. So, feel free to give me your comments below, and I'll be sure to read them. Now, again, we're going to be looking, hopefully, at some point to eventually maybe whether we have a double bottom or if it reaches, say, a bottom on using some other technical indicator, that's fine too. But ultimately what we're hoping and looking for is we could consolidate even further, but we're ultimately hoping that we continue to more or less emulate Bitcoin back during the last market cycle. Now, one of the things that I've talked about is the potentiality of a lengthening market cycle. And I tend to think that the market cycles are lengthening. And you could argue that we are on a 4-year market cycle, and I'm not going to completely discount that as a possibility. And in fact, if we are on a 4-year market cycle, I would very much welcome it. And it's just managing, make sure you manage your risk with that. And we do have risk management videos on this channel, so, and even for Ethereum, so be sure to check that out. So anyways, at some point, while we are experiencing these 50% losses and whatnot, at some point, we're hoping that these bands really start moving up to basically reflect this peak over here. And once we get above, say, $700, if that happens, then there wouldn't really be a price that you could have bought where you would be at a 50% loss, and then maybe we go off to higher highs like Bitcoin did. Let's just go ahead and pull up. So this is a 40% loss, and you can see we get further and further down on the time needed to see these losses. So 30% losses are fairly common. Even in a bull market, 30% losses are fairly common. And then we have 20%, and then finally 10% losses. So you can see, this really is a trader's market. If you can manage your trades and say buy Ethereum, and then when you see it move up, you just sell it, and then wait for it to go back down to repurchase. If you just do that, rinse and repeat it over and over and over, you probably are doing quite well. Now, one of the issues with doing that is you might miss out on astronomical gains, especially if you're, say, taking everything out at once and hoping that it goes back down. Because if you had bought Ethereum on this rise up, then you may have gotten really worried when you saw it continue to go up and really not ever come back down to this level of $10. So you have to consider that. Another thing to consider is that when Ethereum does move up, it does move up very quickly. These moves here, I mean, between 2016, at least say the first quarter of 2016 or the end of the first quarter all the way to 2017, there wasn't really a whole lot going on with Ethereum. And then you can see that from the beginning of 2017 through just the first 1 or 2 quarters, the price of Ethereum went from $10 all the way up to several $100s. So when the prices move historically, they move very quickly, and then the sentiment will go from, other altcoins or Ethereum or whatever you want to call it are dead to it being alt season. And obviously we can't say for sure that that's going to occur again. I think there will be some coins that do see really good returns in the future, but I certainly don't think that anything will mimic what we saw in 2017, because I think people are getting smarter. They're not just throwing their money at all these random ICOs anymore, because they realize the risk, the high level of risk associated with doing something like that. So it's important to pick your coins wisely. Be smart about your investments, and don't just throw money at whatever you see shilled on Reddit that day or whatever it might be. So with that said, I hope this kind of covers looking at losses in Ethereum. If you would prefer to look at positive returns, we also have a video on that, which I will link at the end of the video. We will also be publishing Ethereum letters, which is going to be a fairly extensive report on Ethereum that will be coming out in February. And if you guys, we'll do an abbreviated version for free. There will be a longer version just for the people that support me on my Patreon channel, and feel free to check that out in the description below. But anyways, I hope this stuff is useful for you guys. I'm probably going to be putting out a few Ethereum videos over the next few weeks. Feel free to give me your thoughts, your criticism, whatever it might be. And also, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm running various Twitter polls related to Ethereum over the next few weeks. So if you want to participate in those, be sure to follow me. I think that'll wrap it up for this video. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.